Chapter 1. The Foundation of Steel. Adam Reese had built his empire from nothing, clawing his way up from the streets of Detroit to become one of the most feared private security contractors in the Midwest. At 42, his steel-gray eyes had seen enough betrayal in war zones and corporate boardrooms to trust no one completely, except his family. His wife Monica had been his anchor for 15 years, a beautiful woman with auburn hair and emerald eyes who'd stood by him through his darkest deployments overseas. Their daughter Casey, now 16, was the apple of his eye, smart, athletic, and the only person who could make the battle-hardened veteran smile genuinely. Adam's security firm, Reese Protection Services, specialized in high-risk contracts that others wouldn't touch. His team of ex-military operatives handled everything from executive protection to industrial espionage prevention. The work was dangerous, but it paid well enough to afford the sprawling estate in Birmingham Hills where his family lived in comfort. What made Adam truly dangerous wasn't just his military training or his connections in the shadowy world of private contractors. It was his methodical nature, his ability to think 10 steps ahead, and his absolute intolerance for betrayal. In his world, loyalty was everything, and disloyalty was a death sentence. Monica had seemed to understand this. She'd married into his world knowingly, accepting the long deployments, the dangerous enemies, and the need for constant security. She'd raised Casey while Adam was overseas, managing their social life and maintaining the perfect facade of a devoted military wife. Brandon Douglas had been Adam's business partner for 3 years, a former Navy SEAL who'd joined Reese Protection Services after a dishonorable discharge under circumstances he never fully explained. Tall, charismatic, and deadly in his own right, Brandon handled the company's West Coast operations while Adam focused on the Midwest. The two men had saved each other's lives more than once during joint operations. Brandon was Casey's godfather, a frequent dinner guest, and someone Adam had considered closer than a brother. In Adam's world of shifting loyalties and temporary alliances, Brandon Douglas was one of the few constants he'd allowed himself to trust completely. That trust, Adam would soon learn, had been the biggest mistake of his life. The warning signs had been subtle. Monica's increased attention to her appearance, longer trips to visit her sister in California, and whispered phone calls that ended abruptly when Adam entered the room. But Adam had been distracted by a particularly complex contract involving a tech billionaire receiving death threats, and he dismissed his instincts as paranoia born from too many years in hostile territory. Casey had been acting strange too, withdrawn and moody in ways that went beyond typical teenage rebellion. She'd stopped joining family dinners, spending most of her time locked in her room or out with friends Adam didn't know. When he tried to connect with her, she'd brushed him off with excuses about school stress and social drama. Adam's world was built on intelligence gathering and threat assessment. His home was equipped with the same security systems he installed for his most paranoid clients: cameras, listening devices, and tracking software that could monitor every movement within a 5-mile radius. He'd always told himself it was for protection, but deep down, he'd known it was also because he trusted no one completely. That surveillance network, installed to protect his family from external threats, would soon reveal that the greatest danger had been living under his own roof all along. Chapter 2. The Shattering. The call came on a Tuesday evening while Adam was reviewing security footage from a client's warehouse. The voice on the other end was gruff, professional, clearly law enforcement. "Mr. Reese? This is Detective Ralph Ross with Birmingham PD. You need to get home immediately. There's been an incident involving your family." Adam's blood went cold. His hand instinctively moved to the Glock holstered under his jacket. "What kind of incident? Are they hurt?" "Sir, I can't discuss details over the phone, but your wife and daughter are safe. However, there's a situation at your residence that requires your immediate attention. I'm not authorized to say more, but when you see what's happening, you'll understand why we had to call you." The 20-minute drive home felt like hours. Adam's mind raced through possibilities: home invasion, kidnapping attempt, terrorist threat. His company had made enemies over the years, and he'd always known that one day, someone might try to get to him through his family. But nothing prepared him for what he found when he pulled into his circular driveway. 3 police cars were parked outside his front door, their red and blue lights casting eerie shadows across the manicured lawn. Detective Ross, A heavy-set man in his 50s approached Adam's black Escalade as he stepped out. "Mr. Reese, I need you to remain calm. What you're about to see, well, it's not what any husband should have to witness." Adam's jaw tightened. "Just tell me what's going on. Your wife and your business partner, Brandon Douglas, are inside. They're together, sir. In a compromising position. We received a call about suspicious activity, and when we investigated..." The words hit Adam like a sniper's bullet to the chest. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as the detective's meaning became clear. "Monica, Brandon, together. Where's my daughter?" Adam's voice was deadly quiet. "She's in her room. She appears to have been aware of the situation. Our officers spoke with her briefly. She's been covering for them, Mr. Reese. According to her statement, this has been going on for over a year." Over a year. While Adam had been risking his life to provide for his family, his wife had been betraying him with his best friend. And his daughter, his precious Casey, had been helping them hide it. Adam pushed past the detective and stormed toward his front door. The scene that greeted him in his own living room would be burned into his memory forever. Monica and Brandon, partially clothed, scrambling to cover themselves on the couch, where Adam had watched countless family movies with Casey. Monica's face went white when she saw him. "Adam, I can explain." "Don't." Adam's voice cut through the air like a blade. His hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, but the presence of the police officers forced him to maintain control. "Don't say a single word." Brandon, at least, had the decency to look ashamed. The man who'd once saved Adam's life in Kandahar couldn't meet his eyes. "Adam, I never meant for it to happen like this." "You never meant to get caught, you mean?" Adam's gray eyes were like ice. "How long?" "Adam, please," Monica started. "I wasn't talking to you." His gaze fixed on Brandon. "How long have you been fucking my wife in my house?" The detective stepped forward. "Mr. Reese, I understand this is difficult, but we need to keep this civil." Adam ignored him. 14 months, Brandon finally admitted. "It started when you were in Somalia on the Petrov contract." 14 months. Adam's mind immediately began calculating. Every business trip, every late night at the office, every time he'd trusted Brandon to look after his family while he was away. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was professional, strategic, and complete. "And my daughter knew?" Adam's voice was barely above a whisper. Monica found her voice. "She caught us 6 months ago. We explained that we were in love, that we hadn't meant for it to happen. She understood." "She understood?" Adam's control finally cracked. "She's 16 years old. You made my child an accomplice to your betrayal." The living room fell silent except for the crackle of police radios. Adam stood there, surrounded by the wreckage of his life, feeling something cold and predatory awakening in his chest. This wasn't just infidelity. It was a conspiracy that had made a fool of him for over a year. In war zones, Adam had learned to suppress emotion and think tactically when under fire. That training kicked in now. His face became a mask of cold calculation as he surveyed the scene. His wife, his partner, the police officers who'd witnessed his humiliation. "Where is Casey now?" he asked Detective Ross. "Upstairs in her room. She's pretty shaken up." Adam nodded slowly. "I want them out of my house. Tonight." "Adam, we need to talk about this," Monica pleaded. "We can work something out." "No." Adam's voice was final. "We're done talking. You have 1 hour to pack whatever you can carry and get out. Both of you." As the police officers began to disperse and Monica and Brandon hurried upstairs to gather their belongings, Adam stood alone in his living room, staring at the couch where his world had been destroyed. But beneath the rage and hurt, something else was building, a cold, methodical fury that his enemies in 3 different war zones had learned to fear. Adam Reese had been betrayed before, and he'd always made his betrayers pay. This time would be no different. This time would just be more personal. Chapter 3. The Scope of Betrayal. The next morning, Adam sat in his home office reviewing the evidence his security system had automatically compiled. Years of surveillance footage told a story that made his stomach turn. Intimate moments between Monica and Brandon dating back 15 months, Casey acting as a lookout, family dinners where the 3 conspirators shared knowing glances while Adam remained oblivious. But it was the financial records that truly opened his eyes to the scope of their betrayal. Monica had been systematically draining their joint accounts, transferring money to an account in the Cayman Islands. Nearly $800,000 had disappeared over the past year. Money Adam had earned through blood and risk, now sitting in an offshore account bearing Monica's name and Brandon's signature as co-beneficiary. The business records were even worse. Brandon had been using his position at Reese Protection Services to steal clients, copying confidential files, and building a competing business under a shell corporation. 3 of Adam's most lucrative contracts had mysteriously gone to Vanguard Security Solutions, a company that existed only on paper but was clearly Brandon's operation. Casey's involvement went deeper than Adam had imagined. Phone records showed she'd been feeding information to Brandon about Adam's travel schedule, his meetings, even his moods and suspicions. Text messages between Casey and Monica revealed a daughter who'd been turned against her father, convinced that Adam was a dangerous, controlling man who didn't deserve loyalty or love. "He's a killer, Mom," one message read. "Brandon's right. We'll be safer when we're away from him." Adam's hands clenched around his coffee mug. They'd painted him as the villain in their narrative, justifying their betrayal by demonizing the man who'd provided for them, protected them, and loved them unconditionally. A knock at his door interrupted his investigation. Adam opened it to find Jesse Frederick, his head of security and closest remaining ally. The ex-Marine had served with Adam in Afghanistan and was one of the few people who knew the full extent of Adam's capabilities. "Boss, we've got problems," Jesse said, entering the office with a thick folder. "Brandon cleaned out the Vanguard account yesterday, withdrew everything in cash, and disappeared. And it gets worse." Jesse spread documents across Adam's desk. "He's been selling our operational intelligence to competitors. Client lists, security protocols, personnel files, everything. Some of our boys have been getting death threats from people who know details only Brandon could have provided." Adam studied the evidence, his mind already working through the implications. This wasn't just infidelity and theft. It was treason that had put his employees' lives at risk. "There's more," Jesse continued. "I tracked down the detective who called you yesterday. Ralph Ross. He's Monica's cousin. This whole thing was a setup, boss. They wanted you to find them together." "Why?" Adam asked, though he was already forming his own theories. "Best guess? They needed you to be the bad guy. Monica files for divorce claiming abuse and fear for her safety. Brandon disappears with the money while Monica takes half of everything in the settlement. Meanwhile, Casey testifies about how scary and violent you are, painting you as an unfit father." Adam laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They underestimated me. They always do, boss. Question is, what's the play?" Adam stood and walked to his wall safe, retrieving a secure satellite phone and several fake passports, tools of his trade that most people never knew existed. His network of contacts included mercenaries, intelligence operatives, and criminals who owed him favors from his years in the shadow world of private military contracting. "Brandon thinks he can disappear with my money and start over somewhere else," Adam said. "Monica thinks she can destroy my reputation and take everything I've built. Casey thinks she can betray her father and face no consequences." He turned to Jesse, and for the first time since discovering the betrayal, Adam smiled. It was a cold, predatory expression that had been the last thing many enemies had seen. "They're all wrong. I've spent 20 years learning how to hunt people who don't want to be found. I've ended careers, destroyed lives, and made entire organizations disappear when they crossed me. The fact that these 3 think they can betray Adam Reese and simply walk away tells me they never really knew who they were dealing with." Jesse nodded grimly. "What do you need from me?" "Start with Brandon. I want to know where he is, who he's with, and what resources he has access to. Use the Guatemala network. Those boys specialize in finding people who've gone dark." Adam pulled out a detailed map of the United States and began marking locations. "Monica will try to establish residency in a no-extradition jurisdiction or a state with favorable divorce laws. She'll need to access that Cayman account eventually, which means she'll surface at a major financial center. Watch Miami, New York, and Los Angeles." "And Casey?" Jesse asked. Adam's expression darkened. "Casey made her choice when she decided to betray her father. At 16, she's old enough to understand consequences. I won't let family ties protect someone who actively worked to destroy me." Over the next several hours, Adam activated a network of contacts that most people couldn't imagine existed. Former special forces operators, intelligence assets, criminal organizations, and corrupt officials. All people who owed favors to the man who'd helped them in their darkest hours. By evening, Adam had a comprehensive plan that would systematically destroy the three people who'd betrayed him. It would be methodical, ruthless, and absolutely final. Monica, Brandon, and Casey had made the mistake of thinking they were dealing with a heartbroken husband and father. They were about to learn they'd declared war on one of the most dangerous men in America. The hunt was about to begin. Chapter 4. The Network Awakens. 3 days after the confrontation, Adam's network began providing results. The first call came from Oliver Wood, a former CIA operative who now ran a private intelligence firm in Miami. "Your wife's in town." Oliver's gravelly voice came through the encrypted phone. "She's staying at the Four Seasons under the name Monica Sherman, using her maiden name. She met with a divorce attorney yesterday, Julius Lloyd from Lloyd & Associates, high-end firm that specializes in taking down wealthy husbands." Adam made notes on a secure tablet. "What about the Cayman account? She's been trying to access it, but there's a problem. Turns out your partner was smarter than she thought. The account requires both signatures for any withdrawal over 50 grand, and Brandon's gone completely dark. She can access small amounts for living expenses, but the bulk of the money is locked up." A cold satisfaction settled in Adam's chest. Brandon's greed had created the perfect trap. Monica was stuck with limited resources while Brandon had disappeared with everything else. "Keep eyes on her," Adam ordered. "I want to know everyone she meets, every call she makes, every move she plans." The second call came from Glenn Chung, a former Army Ranger who now worked freelance across Southeast Asia. Glenn's specialty was tracking people who'd disappeared into the criminal underworld. "Found your partner," Glenn reported. "Brandon Douglas is in Bangkok, staying at a safe house owned by a Russian arms dealer named Alfonso Orozco. He's got $3 million in cash and seems to be planning something big." Adam's blood went cold. $3 million was far more than Brandon could have stolen from their accounts. What kind of something big? "He's been meeting with mercenary groups, buying weapons, and setting up what looks like a private military operation. Word on the street is he's planning to eliminate someone back in the States, someone who poses a threat to his new life." The implications hit Adam immediately. Brandon wasn't just running. He was planning to come back and finish what he'd started. Eliminate the one person who could expose his theft and betrayal. "How long do I have?" Adam asked. "Best guess? 2 weeks. He's assembling a team of contractors who specialize in making problems disappear permanently." Adam felt the familiar calm that came before battle. This was no longer just about revenge for betrayal. This was about survival. Brandon had escalated from theft to attempted murder, which changed everything. The third piece of intelligence came from an unexpected source. Mohammed Moses, a hacker who owed Adam a favor from a job in Syria, had been monitoring Casey's digital footprint. What he'd found was disturbing. Casey wasn't just an innocent teenager caught in the middle. She was actively participating in planning Adam's downfall. Text messages revealed she'd been in contact with several of Adam's enemies, providing them with detailed information about his security procedures, daily routines, and psychological vulnerabilities. More disturbing were her online activities. Casey had been researching her father's military record, his business operations, and his personal associates. She'd compiled a detailed dossier that would be invaluable to anyone planning an operation against him. But the most chilling discovery was a video call between Casey and Brandon, recorded 3 days earlier. In it, Casey had provided Brandon with real-time updates on Adam's movements and emotional state following the confrontation. "He's weaker than I've ever seen him," Casey had told Brandon. "This is the perfect time to move. He trusts Jesse, but he doesn't suspect me at all. I can get you whatever intelligence you need." Adam watched the video with growing horror. This wasn't a confused teenager. This was a willing participant in a conspiracy to destroy him. Casey had been turned completely, viewing her father as an enemy to be eliminated rather than a parent to be loved. That evening, Adam called a meeting with his remaining loyal employees. Jesse Frederick arrived with Steve Vincent and Charles Carver, 2 other ex-military contractors who'd worked with Adam for years. They gathered in Adam's secure conference room, a soundproof chamber equipped with jamming devices to prevent electronic surveillance. "Gentlemen," Adam began, "we're not dealing with simple infidelity and theft anymore. This is an active conspiracy to eliminate me and take over my organization. Brandon Douglas has gone operational, and he's planning to return with a kill team." He shared the intelligence he'd gathered, watching their faces grow grim as the scope of the betrayal became clear. "So what's the play, boss?" Steve asked. He was a former Delta Force operator who'd never backed down from a fight. "We're going to give them what they want," Adam said. "They think I'm broken, distracted by personal trauma, and not thinking tactically. They expect me to react emotionally, to make mistakes that will give them opportunities." Adam stood and activated a large digital display showing a map of the United States with several locations marked in red. "Instead, we're going to let them think they're winning while we systematically destroy them. Monica thinks she's safe in Miami, protected by lawyers and distance. Brandon thinks he's untouchable in Bangkok, planning his return. Casey thinks she's smarter than her old man, feeding intelligence to my enemies." The map zoomed in on specific locations as Adam continued. "Monica will be first. She's vulnerable, exposed, and dependent on resources she can't fully access. We're going to make her desperate, force her to make mistakes that will expose Brandon's timeline and Casey's full involvement." "What about Bangkok?" Charles asked. "Brandon's got serious firepower backing him now." Adam's smile was predatory. "Bangkok is Alfonso Orozco's territory, and Alfonso owes me a significant favor. A favor he's been looking for an excuse to repay. Brandon thought he was hiring protection. He actually put himself in the hands of one of my oldest allies." Jesse leaned forward. "And Casey?" Adam's expression went cold. "Casey has chosen to be my enemy. In war, you don't make exceptions for family. You make examples of traitors so others know the cost of betrayal." Over the next hour, Adam outlined a comprehensive plan that would systematically destroy the 3 people who'd betrayed him. It was ruthless, methodical, and absolutely final. By the time he was finished, Monica, Brandon, and Casey would understand the true meaning of consequences. The game had changed from revenge to war, and Adam Reese had never lost a war. Chapter 5, The Trap Titan. Adam's first move against Monica was subtle but devastating. Using his connections in the financial intelligence community, he triggered an IRS audit of Monica's activities, focusing specifically on the offshore accounts and suspicious cash transfers. Within 48 hours, Monica found herself under federal investigation for tax evasion and money laundering. Oliver Wood's surveillance revealed Monica's panic as federal agents appeared at her Miami hotel. Her high-powered attorney, Julius Lloyd, quickly discovered that representing her would require navigating a maze of financial crimes that could implicate his own firm. "She's desperate," Oliver reported during their next encrypted call. Lloyd dropped her yesterday, citing potential conflicts of interest. "She's burning through her accessible funds, trying to find new representation, and the feds have frozen the accounts they've identified." But Adam's masterstroke was yet to come. Using his network of criminal contacts, he arranged for Monica to receive an offer of help from an unlikely source, Carolina Perez, who claimed to be a specialist in offshore financial recovery. In reality, Carolina was one of Adam's assets, a former military intelligence officer who now worked in financial espionage. Monica, desperate and isolated, took the meeting. "Mrs. Reese," Carolina said, sitting across from Monica in a Miami cafe, "I understand you're having difficulties accessing certain overseas assets. I specialize in helping women in your situation recover funds during contentious divorces." Monica's relief was visible. "Can you really help? I have money in the Caymans, but my husband's partner disappeared with the access codes. The federal investigation is freezing everything else." "Absolutely," Carolina assured her. "But I'll need complete transparency about the accounts, the transfers, and everyone involved. My methods require detailed intelligence to circumvent the security measures your husband likely put in place." Over the next week, Monica provided Carolina with a complete breakdown of the financial conspiracy, bank account numbers, transfer dates, Brandon's contact information, and most importantly, the full timeline of the affair and theft. She also revealed Casey's role in providing intelligence and the extent of Brandon's plans. Everything Monica told Carolina went directly to Adam, giving him a complete picture of the conspiracy against him. Meanwhile, in Bangkok, Brandon's situation was becoming complicated in ways he didn't understand. Alfonso Orozco, the Russian arms dealer providing Brandon's safe house, had been one of Adam's first contacts when the revenge plan began. "Your American friend is causing problems," Alfonso told Adam during a secure video call. "He's trying to recruit my men for an operation in the United States. He claims you killed his friends and he needs protection while he returns to America for revenge. Adam laughed grimly. Let him recruit whoever he wants. Make sure they're men you can control when the time comes. Of course. But there's something else you should know. He's not just planning to kill you. He's been asking about your daughter, wanting to know how to find her independently. I think he has plans for the girl that go beyond simple elimination. The revelation sent ice through Adam's veins. Brandon's intentions toward Casey weren't just strategic. They were personal and predatory. The thought of what Brandon might do to his daughter, even a treacherous daughter, awakened something primal and murderous in Adam's chest. Keep him alive until I arrive, Adam said. I want to handle Brandon personally. But first, he had to deal with Casey. Adam's investigation into his daughter's activities had revealed the full scope of her betrayal. She wasn't just providing intelligence to Brandon. She'd been in contact with 3 different criminal organizations that had grudges against Adam's company. She'd provided them with security protocols, employee schedules, and client information that could get his people killed. More disturbing was the psychological profile Casey had compiled on her father. Working with someone who clearly had training in psychological warfare, she'd identified Adam's emotional triggers, his tactical blind spots, and the best methods for manipulating him. It was the kind of intelligence that could only come from years of careful observation by someone he'd trusted completely. Adam arranged to meet Casey at a location she'd never suspect, the grave of his parents in Woodlawn Cemetery. It was a place that held deep emotional significance for him, somewhere Casey would expect him to be vulnerable and off guard. She arrived exactly on time, looking nervous but determined. At 16, Casey had inherited Monica's beauty but Adam's intelligence, a combination that made her betrayal all the more painful. Hello, Casey, Adam said, standing beside his father's headstone. Dad. She couldn't meet his eyes. I'm sorry you had to find out the way you did. Are you? Sorry that I found out, or sorry that you did it? Casey's jaw tightened, a gesture she'd inherited from him. I'm sorry that you made it necessary. You're not the man I thought you were when I was little. And what kind of man am I now? A killer. A criminal. Someone who hurts people for money and pretends it's about protecting them. Casey's voice grew stronger as she spoke, as if she was reciting words she'd practiced. Mom and Brandon opened my eyes to who you really are. Adam felt a cold calm settle over him. And who am I, Casey? You're a monster. A man who spent so many years in war zones that you've forgotten how to be human. Mom deserves better than living in fear, and I deserve better than having a father who might snap and hurt us someday. The words hit Adam like physical blows, not because they were true, but because they revealed how completely his daughter had been turned against him. Someone had spent months, perhaps years, carefully poisoning her mind with a narrative that painted him as the villain of their family story. Who taught you to think like that, Casey? No one taught me. I figured it out myself when I started paying attention to the kind of work you really do. Adam pulled out his phone and played the recorded conversation between Casey and Brandon, watching her face go pale as her own voice filled the cemetery air. He's weaker than I've ever seen him. This is the perfect time to move. You figured this out yourself? Adam asked when the recording ended. Or did someone give you very specific instructions on how to betray your father? Casey's composure cracked. You've been spying on me? I've been protecting myself from my enemies. I just never thought my own daughter would be one of them. The conversation that followed revealed the full scope of Casey's manipulation. Brandon had been grooming her for over 2 years, slowly turning her against Adam by feeding her carefully crafted lies about his work, his character, and his intentions toward their family. Monica had reinforced these narratives, creating an environment where Casey genuinely believed her father was a threat to their safety and happiness. But Casey had gone beyond simple manipulation. She'd actively chosen to participate in the conspiracy, providing intelligence, covering for Monica and Brandon, and working to destroy the man who'd loved and protected her for 16 years. You have a choice to make, Adam told her as their conversation neared its end. You can come home, admit what you've done, and help me understand how deep this conspiracy goes. Or you can continue working with people who are planning to kill your father. Casey's response was immediate and final. I can't trust you anymore, Dad. I'm scared of what you might do to Mom, to Brandon, even to me. I think it's better if I stay away until this is all over. As Adam watched his daughter walk away, disappearing into the crowd of mourners visiting other graves, he felt something fundamental shift inside him. The last vestiges of the loving father died in that cemetery, replaced entirely by the cold, calculating predator who'd survived wars and eliminated threats for 2 decades. Casey had made her choice. Now she would live with the consequences. Chapter 6. The First Blood. Adam's campaign against Monica reached its crescendo 2 weeks later when federal agents raided her Miami hotel room at dawn. The evidence Carolina had helped Adam fabricate, carefully doctored financial records showing Monica's involvement in arms trafficking and money laundering for international criminals, was overwhelming. But the raid yielded more than just Monica's arrest. Hidden in her luggage, agents found a detailed dossier on Adam's business operations, client lists, and security protocols, intelligence she'd been planning to sell to his competitors. They also discovered communications equipment that connected her directly to Brandon's operation in Bangkok. Oliver would watch from across the street as Monica was led away in handcuffs, her carefully constructed new life collapsing around her. She's looking at federal charges for financial crimes, conspiracy, and providing material support to international criminal organizations, Oliver reported to Adam. The prosecutor thinks he can get 20 to life if it goes to trial. Will it go to trial? Adam asked. Not if she cooperates. She's already asking about plea deals and witness protection. The prosecutor wants Brandon Douglas, and she's the only link they have to him. Adam smiled coldly. Monica's desperation would drive her to provide everything the authorities needed to find Brandon, effectively turning her into bait for the trap Adam was preparing in Bangkok. But Monica had one final card to play, and she used it during her first interrogation. I want to make a deal, she told FBI Special Agent Judith Logan. But I need protection for my daughter. She's in danger from my husband. He's not who you think he is. Monica spun a carefully crafted narrative about Adam's true nature, painting him as a domestic abuser who ran a criminal organization under the guise of a security company. She claimed Casey was in hiding because she feared for her life, and that Brandon had been trying to protect them both from Adam's violence. Casey has evidence, Monica insisted. She recorded conversations, documented threats, compiled proof that her father is planning to kill us all to protect his illegal operations. Agent Logan was skeptical but intrigued. If Monica's claims were true, they'd stumbled onto something much bigger than financial crimes. The FBI's investigation into Adam began immediately, with surveillance teams assigned to watch his movements and digital forensics experts examining his communications. What they found, however, wasn't evidence of criminal activity. It was the operation of a highly professional security contractor whose work, while dangerous, was entirely legal. But Casey played her part perfectly. When FBI agents finally tracked her down at a safe house Monica had arranged, she provided them with carefully edited recordings that seemed to support her mother's claims. Audio files of Adam discussing, eliminating threats, and making problems disappear, conversations that sounded sinister out of context but were actually referring to legitimate security operations. Casey's performance was Oscar-worthy. She presented herself as a terrified teenager who discovered her father's true nature and was now in hiding for her life. She had documentation of Adam's contacts with questionable individuals, photographs of weapons stored in their home, and financial records that could be interpreted as evidence of criminal activity. My father is planning to kill my mother and Brandon, Casey told Agent Logan with tears in her eyes. He's told people that betraying him is a death sentence, and he always keeps his word. I'm scared he's going to come after me next because I know too much. The FBI found Casey's story compelling, especially when combined with Monica's testimony and the evidence she'd provided. They began building a case against Adam for domestic terrorism, conspiracy to commit murder, and operating a criminal enterprise. But Adam had been expecting this move. Unknown to the FBI, Adam's company had been working with federal law enforcement for years, providing security services and intelligence support for sensitive operations. Assistant Director Stephen Potts of the FBI's Counterterrorism Division had personally worked with Adam on 3 different cases and knew his character and capabilities intimately. When Agent Logan's investigation reached Potts' desk, he immediately contacted Adam through secure channels. They're building a case against you, Potts warned during an encrypted phone call. Your wife and daughter have provided compelling evidence that you're planning to eliminate them. On the surface, it looks credible. But you know better, Adam replied. I know you, Reese. I also know that people don't usually fabricate evidence this elaborate unless they're hiding something bigger. What's really going on? Adam provided Potts with a complete briefing on the conspiracy against him, the affair, the financial theft, Brandon's plans for assassination, and Casey's active participation in intelligence gathering for his enemies. He also shared the evidence Carolina had compiled from Monica's confessions and the surveillance data from Bangkok. Jesus Christ, Potts muttered after reviewing the materials. Your daughter's been feeding intelligence to known criminals? For over a year. Some of the information she provided has already been used in attacks against my personnel overseas. Potts was quiet for a long moment. What do you need from me? Time. And a clear field of operation. Brandon's planning to return to the United States within the week. When he does, I'm going to end this permanently. And your family? Adam's voice went cold. They made their choices. They'll face the consequences. 3 days later, Monica's carefully constructed narrative began to unravel when Assistant Director Potts shared newly discovered intelligence with Agent Logan's team. The evidence showed that Monica and Casey weren't victims. They were active participants in a conspiracy to steal classified information and eliminate a federal contractor. But by then, it was too late for Monica to change course. The trap was closing, and she was about to discover that betting against Adam Reese had been the last mistake she'd ever make. Chapter 7. Bangkok Reckoning. Brandon Douglas felt confident as he prepared to leave Bangkok. His team of 12 mercenaries was assembled, armed, and ready for the operation that would eliminate Adam Reese and secure his new life with Monica and the money they'd stolen together. What Brandon didn't know was that every member of his team worked for Alfonso Orozco, and Alfonso's loyalty belonged entirely to Adam Reese. The revelation came at 3 a.m. when Brandon's safe house was surrounded by Thai military forces. But instead of arresting him, they simply waited while a single black sedan pulled up to the front gate. Adam Reese stepped out of the car, dressed in tactical gear and carrying weapons that Bangkok's authorities had quietly agreed to overlook for the next few hours. Alfonso had called in favors with the Thai government, ensuring that whatever happened in the safe house that night would never be officially recorded. Brandon's face went white when Adam walked through the front door, flanked by the same mercenaries Brandon thought were working for him. Hello, Brandon, Adam said quietly. We need to talk. The safe house's main room had been cleared except for a single chair in the center and a table covered with documents, financial records, communication logs, and surveillance photos that detailed every aspect of Brandon's conspiracy. You always were good at planning, Adam continued, gesturing to the materials. 15 months of preparation, carefully coordinated with my wife and daughter. Stealing money, clients, classified information. Quite an operation. Brandon tried to maintain his composure, but sweat was beading on his forehead. Adam, I know how this looks, but it looks like you fucked my wife, stole my money, turned my daughter against me, and were planning to have me killed, Adam interrupted. Because that's exactly what happened. Adam walked around the chair where Brandon sat zip-tied, studying his former partner with the same cold calculation he'd once used to interrogate enemy combatants. The money I can replace. The business damage I can repair. But you touched my family, Brandon. You poisoned my daughter's mind and made her an accomplice to treason. That's unforgivable. Casey came to us, Brandon said desperately. She figured out what kind of man you really are and wanted protection. We were trying to help her. Adam stopped walking. What kind of man am I, Brandon? A killer. A monster who's lost all humanity after too many years in war zones. Casey was terrified of you. Adam smiled, and Brandon felt his blood turn to ice. You know what's funny about that narrative? It's exactly what I'd expect someone to say if they were trying to justify betraying me. Create a story that makes me the villain so you feel better about stabbing me in the back. Adam pulled out a tablet and showed Brandon surveillance footage from the safe house over the past week. But here's what I find interesting. You've been asking Alfonso's men about more than just killing me. You've been very curious about how to find Casey once you return to the States. The footage showed Brandon in detailed conversations about tracking methods, asking specific questions about subduing and transporting teenage girls without leaving evidence. See, Brandon, I know you. I know that you've always had a thing for young girls. I overlooked it because you were useful, but I never forgot. And now you've got access to my 16-year-old daughter, who trusts you completely. Brandon's facade finally cracked. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Adam's voice was deadly quiet. You seduced my wife to get access to my daughter. Monica was never the real target, was she? Casey was. The room fell silent except for the sound of Brandon's labored breathing. Adam had uncovered the truth that made everything else make sense. This entire conspiracy had been designed to give Brandon Douglas access to Casey Reese. How long have you been planning this? Adam asked. When Brandon didn't answer, Adam nodded to one of Alfonso's men, who stepped forward with a pair of bolt cutters. I can make this easy or hard, Adam said. But you're going to tell me everything. What followed was a systematic interrogation that revealed the true scope of Brandon's obsession. He'd been watching Casey for 3 years, waiting for her to mature, planning elaborate scenarios to gain access to her. The affair with Monica had been calculated from the beginning, a way to get close to the family and turn them against Adam. The financial theft was secondary, designed to fund Brandon's plan to disappear with Casey once Adam was eliminated. He'd already arranged a new identity for her, a remote location where they could start fresh together. Monica doesn't know, Brandon finally admitted. She thinks this is about love and money. She has no idea that I've been grooming Casey, that everything I've done has been to get her alone and dependent on me. Adam felt a rage unlike anything he'd experienced in 2 decades of warfare. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a pedophile's elaborate plan to kidnap and abuse his daughter. Where is Casey now? Adam asked. Safe house in Detroit. She thinks she's hiding from you, but really she's exactly where I need her to be when I get back. Adam stood and walked to the table where his weapons were laid out. Alfonso, clear the building. This is going to get messy. What happened in the Bangkok safe house over the next 2 hours would never be officially recorded. When it was over, Brandon Douglas had provided Adam with every detail of the conspiracy, including the locations of all financial assets, the identities of everyone involved, and the full scope of his plans for Casey. Brandon had also learned why Adam Reese was considered one of the most dangerous men in the private military industry. The lesson came at a cost that would leave him alive but permanently broken, a living reminder of what happened to people who threatened Adam's family. As dawn broke over Bangkok, Adam made a series of encrypted phone calls to the United States. Monica was already in federal custody, but Casey was still free, still believing she was hiding from her father instead of waiting to be delivered to a predator. The next phase of Adam's revenge would be the most personal yet. His daughter had chosen to betray him, but she didn't deserve what Brandon had planned for her. Despite everything, Adam was still her father, and he would protect her from Brandon's true intentions. But once Casey was safe, she would face the consequences of her betrayal. Adam Reese's mercy had limits, and Casey had crossed every one of them. Chapter 8. The Detroit Endgame. Casey Reese sat in the abandoned warehouse in Detroit's industrial district, checking her encrypted phone every few minutes for updates from Brandon. It had been 3 days since their last communication, and she was starting to worry that something had gone wrong in Bangkok. She had no way of knowing that Brandon Douglas was currently strapped to a hospital bed in a Bangkok private clinic, recovering from injuries that would leave him permanently disabled but alive enough to spend the rest of his life in a Thai prison. The warehouse had seemed like the perfect hiding place, an off-the-books safe house that Brandon had set up months earlier as part of their escape plan. Casey thought she was hiding from her father's wrath while Brandon assembled his team. In reality, she was exactly where Brandon wanted her, isolated, dependent, and waiting for him to return and complete his real objective. Adam arrived in Detroit that evening, having flown directly from Bangkok on a private jet. His first stop wasn't the warehouse. It was a meeting with Detective Ralph Ross, Monica's cousin who had participated in the original setup. Ross was waiting in a downtown parking garage, clearly nervous about the clandestine meeting. As a 20-year veteran of the Detroit PD, he'd thought he understood the kind of man Adam Reese was. The intelligence briefing he'd received from FBI Assistant Director Potts had corrected that misunderstanding. Mr. Reese, Ross began, I want you to know that I was just trying to help family. Monica told me you were abusive, that Casey was in danger. Monica told you a lot of things, Adam interrupted. Most of them lies designed to make you an accessory to conspiracy and theft. The question now is whether you're going to help me fix this situation or spend the rest of your career fighting federal charges. Ross's face went pale. What do you need? Adam handed him a tablet showing surveillance footage from Bangkok. Brandon Douglas has been eliminated as a threat, but he left behind detailed plans for abducting and sexually assaulting my daughter. Casey thinks she's hiding from me, but she's actually waiting to be delivered to a pedophile. The footage showed Brandon's interrogation, including his detailed confessions about his true intentions toward Casey. Ross watched in growing horror as the man Monica had portrayed as Casey's protector revealed himself to be a predator who'd been planning to kidnap and abuse a 16-year-old girl. Jesus Christ, Ross muttered. Monica had no idea. Monica's negligence doesn't absolve her of responsibility, Adam said coldly. But right now, my priority is getting Casey away from that warehouse before Brandon's backup plan activates. Adam explained that Brandon had arranged for associates in Detroit to retrieve Casey if he failed to return within 72 hours. These weren't the federal agents Casey expected. They were criminal associates who would deliver her to buyers in the international human trafficking market. The pickup is scheduled for tonight, Adam continued. Casey will go willingly because she thinks they're taking her to safety. By the time she realizes the truth, it'll be too late. Ross was quiet for a long moment, processing the magnitude of his mistake. What do you want me to do? Help me save my daughter. Whatever she's done, whatever she thinks of me, she doesn't deserve what Brandon planned for her. The operation began at midnight. Adam positioned himself across the street from the warehouse while Ross and two trusted officers set up a perimeter. The plan was simple. Intercept Brandon's associates before they could reach Casey, then extract her before she realized what was happening. The criminals arrived exactly on schedule. 3 men in a black van who clearly weren't federal agents. They moved with the practiced efficiency of people who'd done this kind of work before, carrying restraints and sedatives that left no doubt about their intentions. Adam let them enter the warehouse before moving. He wanted Casey to see who her real enemies were, to understand how close she'd come to a fate worse than anything she'd feared from her father. The confrontation inside the warehouse was swift and brutal. Adam's 2 decades of combat experience made short work of 3 human traffickers who'd expected to collect a passive victim. By the time the shooting stopped, all 3 men were dead, and Casey was crouched behind a shipping container, finally understanding the true nature of her situation. Dad, Casey's voice was small, frightened, nothing like the confident teenager who'd betrayed him in the cemetery. Hello, Casey. Adam stepped over the bodies of the men who'd come to take her, his weapon still drawn but pointed away from her. We need to talk. The conversation that followed revealed how completely Casey had been manipulated by Brandon and Monica. She genuinely believed that her father was planning to hurt them, that Brandon was their protector, and that hiding in the warehouse was the safest option. He was going to sell me, Casey whispered, staring at the restraints one of the dead men had been carrying. That's what this was really about, wasn't it? He never cared about Mom or the money. He just wanted me. Adam nodded grimly. Brandon Douglas was a pedophile who spent 3 years planning to get access to you. Everything else, the affair, the theft, the conspiracy, was just cover for his real objective. Casey began to cry, finally understanding the full scope of how she'd been used. I helped him. I gave him information about you, about your work, about everything. I thought I was protecting myself and Mom, but I was helping him plan to kidnap and abuse you, Adam finished. Yes, the weight of her betrayal and its consequences crashed down on Casey all at once. She'd worked against the one person who'd actually been trying to protect her, helping a predator gain access to their family, while painting her father as the villain. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry, Dad. I believed them when they said you were dangerous. I thought you were going to hurt us. Adam looked down at his daughter, broken, terrified, and finally seeing the truth of the situation. Part of him wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay, to be the loving father he'd always been. But Casey had made choices. She'd actively participated in a conspiracy that had nearly cost him everything and had put her own life in danger. She'd betrayed him, stolen from him, and worked with his enemies for over a year. I know you're sorry, Casey, Adam said quietly. But sorry doesn't undo the damage you've caused. It doesn't bring back the trust you destroyed or fix the consequences of your choices. Casey looked up at him, hope and fear warring in her eyes. What happens now? Adam's response would determine not just Casey's fate, but the man he chose to be going forward. The loving father who'd raised her was still there, buried beneath layers of betrayal and rage. But so was the cold, calculating operator who'd never forgiven a betrayal in his life. Now you learn that actions have consequences, Adam said finally, and that some mistakes can never be undone. Chapter 9. The Price of Betrayal. 6 months later, Adam Reese sat in his home office reviewing the aftermath of his campaign for justice. The walls were lined with new security monitors, and his desk held files documenting the complete destruction of everyone who had betrayed him. Monica Sherman, she'd legally reverted to her maiden name, was serving a 15-year federal sentence for financial crimes, conspiracy, and providing material support to international criminal organizations. Her high-powered legal team had tried everything, but the evidence Carolina had helped Adam fabricate was airtight. Monica would be in her 50s before she saw freedom again. The Cayman Islands accounts had been seized by federal authorities, with the money eventually returned to Adam as the victim of financial crimes. Monica's attempts to claim half of his assets in divorce proceedings had been dismissed when her criminal conviction invalidated their prenuptial agreement. Brandon Douglas remained in a Bangkok hospital prison, paralyzed from the waist down and facing life imprisonment for weapons trafficking and conspiracy charges. Alfonso Orozco had ensured that Brandon's medical care was just adequate enough to keep him alive and conscious, but no more comfortable than necessary. The most satisfying part was that Brandon would never harm another child. Adam had made certain of that during their final conversation in the Bangkok safe house. But it was Casey's file that Adam opened most often, and it always left him with complicated emotions. After the warehouse incident, Casey had been taken into protective custody while federal investigators unraveled the full scope of the conspiracy. Her cooperation with the investigation had been complete and devastating. She'd provided evidence that led to the arrest of several criminal organizations that had been using the intelligence she'd stolen from Adam's company. The FBI had offered Casey witness protection, recognizing that her father's enemies might target her for the information she possessed. She'd accepted, disappearing into a new identity in a location that even Adam didn't know. But before she'd vanished, Casey had left him a letter. Adam kept it in his personal safe, next to the last family photo they'd taken together, back when she was 14 and still believed her father was a hero. Dad, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I understand now what I did to you, to our family, and to your people who got hurt because of the information I gave away. I understand that Brandon used me to get to you, but I also understand that I chose to help him. No one forced me to betray you. I've spent 6 months trying to figure out how I became someone who could do what I did to her own father. I think it started when I got scared of how dangerous your work was, and Brandon convinced me that meant you were dangerous too. He made me believe that loving you meant I was in danger, and that protecting myself meant destroying you. I was wrong about everything. You never hurt us. You never threatened us. You were just a father trying to provide for his family, and I repaid your love with betrayal. I know you can't trust me anymore. I know I can't come home. I know that what I did broke something between us that can never be fixed. But I want you to know that I remember who you really are, and I'm proud to be your daughter, even if I don't deserve to be. I hope someday you can think of me without anger. I hope you can remember the little girl who used to think her daddy could do anything, before I became the teenager who helped strangers try to destroy him. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry I forgot how to show it. Casey. Adam had read the letter hundreds of times, and it never failed to remind him of the fundamental truth he'd learned from this experience. Betrayal was most devastating when it came from those you loved most. Jesse Frederick entered the office without knocking, a privilege he'd earned through unwavering loyalty during the darkest period of Adam's life. The Bangkok loose ends are tied up, Jesse reported. Alfonso says Brandon tried to hang himself last week, but the guards cut him down. He'll live long enough to serve his full sentence. Adam nodded without looking up from Casey's letter. And the Detroit investigation? Closed. Detective Ross is taking early retirement, but no charges were filed. The official report lists Brandon's associates as human traffickers eliminated during a federal operation to protect a minor witness. Good. Adam locked the letter back in his safe and turned to face Jesse. What about our business? Stronger than ever. Turns out, surviving a coordinated betrayal and elimination attempt has enhanced our reputation in certain circles. We've got more high-risk contracts than we can handle. Jesse paused, studying his boss's expression. You know, Casey's offer still stands. The FBI says you could have supervised contact with her if you wanted. Witness protection doesn't mean complete isolation. Adam considered this, as he had many times over the past months. Casey was still his daughter, and part of him missed the girl she'd been before Brandon's manipulation had turned her into an enemy. But trust, once broken by betrayal, could never be fully restored. No, Adam said finally. Casey made her choice when she decided to help my enemies. The fact that she was manipulated doesn't change the consequences of her actions. She's safer in witness protection, and I'm safer not knowing where she is. Jesse nodded, understanding the logic even if he didn't agree with it. And if she tries to contact you, she won't. Casey's smart enough to know that bridge is burned permanently. Later that evening, Adam stood on the balcony of his rebuilt home, looking out over the city lights of Birmingham Hills. The house felt different now, larger, emptier, more like a fortress than a family residence. He'd had the entire property renovated after Monica and Casey left, removing every trace of the life he'd built with people who'd ultimately betrayed him. The physical scars of their conspiracy had healed, but the psychological ones ran deeper. Adam found himself incapable of trust in personal relationships, viewing every interaction through the lens of potential betrayal. He'd become more effective as a businessman and operator, but less human in every way that mattered. His phone buzzed with a secure message from an encrypted number. For a moment, Adam wondered if it might be Casey, finding a way to reach out despite the barriers between them. Instead, it was a contract offer from a government agency that required someone with Adam's specific skill set and moral flexibility. The job involved eliminating a terrorist cell that had been targeting American civilians overseas, work that would take him back to the familiar world of justified violence and clear enemies. Adam accepted the contract without hesitation. He'd learned that the world of family and emotional connections was too complicated, too full of opportunities for betrayal and manipulation. The world of professional violence was simpler, more honest, and infinitely safer for someone who could no longer afford to trust. As he prepared for deployment, Adam allowed himself one final thought about the family he'd lost. Monica would spend the next decade in prison, paying for her greed and betrayal. Brandon would spend the rest of his life as a broken man in a foreign prison, paying for his predatory intentions toward a child. And Casey would spend the rest of her life in hiding, paying for the choice to betray the one person who'd loved her unconditionally. Justice had been served, but Adam Reese had learned that justice and happiness were very different things. He'd won his war against the people who'd betrayed him, but the victory had cost him the capacity for the kind of love and trust that made life worth living. In the end, Adam reflected, that might have been the cruelest consequence of all. His enemies had been destroyed, but in destroying them, he'd also destroyed the part of himself that had been capable of being betrayed in the first place. The man who'd once been a loving husband and father was gone forever, replaced by someone harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. It was exactly what his betrayers had deserved, and exactly what Adam Reese had become. The phone call that had started this nightmare echoed in his memory. "Sir, you better come home. Your wife's new boyfriend is with your daughter." Adam had come home, and he'd seen for himself. What he'd seen had transformed him from a man who could love into a man who could only survive. It was a fair trade, he told himself. But late at night, in the silence of his empty house, Adam Reese sometimes wondered if Monica, Brandon, and Casey had taken more from him than money and trust. They'd taken his humanity itself. And unlike money or property, that was something that could never be recovered. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.